Hey there, just wanted to provide an update to the Divine Ire Totem Surfcaster that I posted a video on before the league and kind of show you the way that the build has evolved now that the first weekend is over and the things that we've been able to do, as well as some of the optimizations that we've made away from the original plan. Overall, I'd consider this build theory craft to be a pretty big, tremendous success. We completed all Ubers and started farming T17 maps on early day 3-ish. We potentially could have done it sooner, but we were a little bit slow in the early game. Maybe swapping to totems a little bit too late. We played Power Siphon Mines for most of early mapping, while the aurabot handled getting a little bit of raw currency in Heist to get started on his own aurabot gear. But what you see here is basically my current PoB for the build, as in my current character, and connected with it is my current aurabot and his current auras. You can see that we're sitting at, with the normal Divine Ire, we're currently sitting at about 450 mil DPS, and if we turn off normal Divine Ire and turn on Disintegration, which we do for most Uber bosses, we sit at, this thing is not set to release, but if you set this correctly, you'll see that we have about a little bit over 500 mil DPS when looking at the bossing skill, which we only have at 20. We haven't managed to get a 21 of Design Ire Disintegration yet. But you'll see that the gear is pretty close in many ways between like the budget and endgame version of the build. We have a +2 AoE Soul Mantle. We don't have like a double corrupt Soul Mantle. We aren't running Ralakesh yet, although we could. We just didn't think we had the points and didn't want to spend the money on the boots yet. And otherwise, most things are the same. We also haven't gone CI yet because we've been mostly running into issues with not being able to really convert to full CI without having survivability issues. So we've just been kind of staying life, I'm still running Zealot's Oath, that way that his regen from Vitality and Rejuve Totem actually does something. Bear in mind, even though I'm life, I am still using Zealot's Oath, so I am still bringing a normal life flask, just in case I get hit by chaos damage. Just keep that in mind. It's a little bit finicky when you get hit by chaos damage, but overall it's fine. I'm handling chaos damage primarily with this chaos cluster here, because I've been doing a lot of Uber series recently, so you need a little bit of chaos res to not instantly die to that. So I'm taking this cluster here, which gives you about 39% chaos res. I have a belt swap, one for Cirrus and mapping and one for not. This one is the Cirrus one, where I have a flat chaos resistance modifier on it. It's overall a little bit less tanky than my other belt, but it gives my chaos res some sustenance. And the other thing is I'm actually also running the Energy Shield Mastery for 30% of chaos damage taking does not bypass Energy Shield. This is actually pretty crazy for increasing your chaos max hit. You can see that I gain about, I think it's 25%, 26% chaos max hit just by taking it. It's really good. I would definitely recommend. And I'm also running the minor, where is it? This one. One of the Arakali for dot damage, because that's one of my weaknesses at the moment, as well as 40% chaos resistance against dots, which is the main reason I die to chaos damage, so like poison, the chaos part of the degen on Cirrus, that sort of thing. But yeah, this is the current version of the build. There's a few upgrades that we want to do, like getting Ralakesh, and potentially trying to double corrupt a good chess piece, although that probably won't happen because it'll probably take a lot of money. But it's been going great. We've killed all Ubers. We've had T17s on farm. We're currently just doing Abyss because it gives us XP. I'm level 95, and so is the aurabot. We got it primarily through farming T17 with Abyss. One thing we did change in the early game, which does hurt personal damage a little bit, but it helps enable Annihilating Light even earlier than usual, is the aurabot is not handling Purity of Elements. I am, so I'm not running Skitterbots with Bone Chill, which is a moderate damage loss, like maybe 10% DPS-ish, maybe a little bit more than that. But it allows me to get ailment immunity because the aurabot is a little bit too starved on RMR this early in the game. So I'm running Purity of Elements. This is also the part of the main reason I'm able to run Annihilating Light, because we have triple Purity plus Purity of Elements. And the last important thing to note is that we are getting Convert no longer through the Mastery, so we've dropped the point, the physical Convert Mastery, and we're finishing our Mastery together with a Watcher's Eye mod for Convert to Wrath, because my aurabot has enough to be able to full-time provide Wrath, so I don't have to ever worry about not being fully converted. So that's 35% there. And we are running a prefix craft on the glove, as you can see here, that for Phys convert to lightning damage. I could actually change this into an Eldritch Implicit. I just haven't really needed to yet, since we are planning to change this glove into an ES glove for a little bit more survivability. Now, really the last thing, not the last thing being the last thing, but I do want to note that I do have like a corner of my inventory that is dedicated to swapping stuff around. So, for example, I have an item rarity support for when I'm doing like generic mapping, because item rarity just scales gold gain and stuff like that. It's just kind of nice to upkeep your gold for like King's March stuff, because I am trying to do that in this event. I also have, obviously, the bossing version of Divine Hour, which is Divine Hour Disintegration, which I'll swap in with this. And then I have an increased AoE support, which is generally my default if I'm doing like just normal things or like not T17 content, but not Uber content. Just because this makes the AoE of the Divine Ire like absolutely gigantic. So allow me to show that off. So like I'll pull a concentrated effect out, which is the primary bossing link in this. Now they're in a map. Hopefully I don't die, but you can see I'm going to throw a Divine Ire totem down, and the AoE is going to be pretty huge. You can see that the AoE is pretty big, all things considered. So that's one of the reasons you might want to run increased AoE, because once you get to this level of damage, just the pulsing AoE portion of these totems will actually do enough damage to kill most non-rare mobs and even some rare mobs, if the map isn't like super juiced with like delirium and stuff. So yeah. Just keep that in mind. It's not like simple just keep and go. You do have to do a little bit of gem swapping. I also have this amethyst ring, which is stacked with chaos res, which I swap with an anathema when doing like T17s and stuff like that, just to increase survivability. Because realistically, you don't need anathema for anything but uber bosses, so I just don't use it unless I'm doing uber bossing. Should really stop saying last thing because I'm going to keep adding things onto it when I think about it. A very last important thing to note is that once you actually swap to Annihilating Light, you should actually check the value of sea legs, because unless you need the cold resistance, when you actually delete your resistance by putting on Annihilating Light, the value of sea legs actually plummets in terms of damage. So if you don't need the cold and lightning res to actually like cap your res with your aurabot, I recommend taking basically anything else. Changing the seasons is fine if you're like taking hits in T17s. I wouldn't recommend it for uber bossing, but if you're doing T17s, it's like kind of not that bad. If assuming you're not running Purity of Elements, it's also really important. You can't run Purity Elements with this, because if you're running Purity of Elements, you can't be chilled. I'm currently running Brine Bound because min 1 second freeze is just kind of convenient, as well as the defensive layer of just having a 50-50 chance of freezing anything that touches you. Shock spread would be okay, but yeah, there's not a ton of great other choices, so just keep that in mind as well. That about sums things up. I hope anyone who has been trying this build has been enjoying it. I have actually looked on PoE Ninja and seen a couple people playing this build. I don't know if it was inspired by me or not, but hope you guys are having as good of a time as I have, and that about sums it up. I might consider making a version of this build for like the normal ascendancies. We'll have to see if it still works. The free convert from lightning to cold is pretty broken, so who knows.